I went to McMurray College in Jacksonville, Illinois. So this was our downtown right here at Springfield when I was at McMurray. By show of hands, how many of you do outstanding work? Raise your hand if you're really good at what you do. All right, about 21 people, very good. How many of you feel, as a result of the work that you do, that you're making a difference in the lives of at least one human being? Let's see those hands. And how many of you feel, as a result of the work that you do, that you deserve a $90,000 a year pay increase? All right, we just keep increasing the amount. In March of 1995, I was giving a speech in Downers Grove, Illinois. And Downers Grove, Illinois is a suburb outside of the city of Chicago, and there was a woman who was sitting in the front row of my seminar who asked me, was I the Mark Sanders who worked at a detox center in 1985, a decade earlier? I said, yeah, that's me. She said, I was a patient on the detox unit. You were my counselor. Now, I don't always remember names, but I really remember faces, so I'm looking at all of you right now. I have you in perspective. I would know that I saw you here this day. And I also remember stories, so if you tell me your story, I'll remember your story. Here's hers. She was a heroin user and a cocaine user who sold her body through prostitution. And shortly after she left our detox center, she went back on the corner to sell her body. I worked the evening shift, and some evenings I get off at midnight, I'd see her standing on the corner. And what I remember, she looked really bad to me. You know how when a person goes back to using drugs, they stop eating, they lose a lot of weight? So I remember saying, boy, she looks really bad. I don't think she'll ever turn her life around. And there she was a decade later, sitting in the front row of my seminar. See, that's why I'm convinced that machines, computers, will never be able to do your job. Computers will never be counselors. Because what I've learned in my 30 years is that it's not like you can feed information to a computer who will recover, who won't. Although, if the job of a counselor is empathy, compassion, and patience, especially patience, and more patience, machines are getting really close to us. Once I was staying in a Ritz-Carlton hotel in Washington, D.C. I put $1 in the pop machine. Couldn't figure out what brand of soda I wanted. While I was standing there, the machine said, sorry you're having a difficult time. Take your time. Sounded like a licensed therapist to me. So I looked down and I caught the initials behind her name, LCSW CADC. Licensed clinical social worker, certified alcohol and drug abuse counselor from street prostitution. So I said, well, let's meet. So during the break, she told me her story. She left our detox facility and she went back out into the streets to do more research. Found out she really was a drug addict. And so she went to another detox facility. She went from there to like 12-step group meetings. She went from there to a community college to receive her GED. Stayed in the community college and got an associate's degree, went to a university, received a bachelor's degree, went to graduate school, received a master's degree in social work. So now she worked for 2 years and she's ready to apply for licensure. She told me that one of the questions they ask you on the application for licensure is have you ever been convicted of a felony? She said her life was about honesty, and so she checked yes, and the state denied her the right to take the exam. She said, but she had fought too hard to give up that easy, and on appeal she became licensed. When she told me that story, I told her, you didn't make my day. Literally, she made my decade, and it's really one story like that after another that really keeps us going in the work that we do. I have a friend named Greg Risberg. Greg Risberg is a speaker. Told me that one day a man called him at midnight and woke him up and said, are you the same Greg Risberg, the same person who taught 4th grade across the street from Robert Taylor, the housing projects? Anybody familiar with Robert Taylor housing projects in Chicago? They're like 16 stories tall. People who were poor stacked on top of people who were poor. Did you teach at the school across the street from Robert Taylor housing project 30 years ago? Say, yeah, that's me. He says, I was a student in your 4th grade class. He says, I'm a decorated military man. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if I wouldn't wind up achieving the rank of a Colin Powell. I was just calling you to tell you that you really made a difference in my life. And Greg said, what did I do? He said, every Friday you would stop teaching, and you would sit the whole class in a large circle, and you would have us to read the newspaper from cover to cover. And in reading the newspaper from cover to cover, what I learned was that there was more happening in the world than simply what was happening in the housing projects. So it made me curious about the world. So I hurried up and graduated from high school, joined the military. I went around the world twice, he said. But you did something that was more special than that. He said, one day you invited us on a field trip. This wasn't an ordinary field trip, this was special. You invited us to your house. And you asked everybody to bring a bag lunch to your house. And I looked at my refrigerator that night, and I saw that I had no food. And when I made it to your house with no food, you went in your refrigerator and you fixed me a sandwich. She says, anyway, the reason I'm calling is because we still have a home in Chicago, and I'll be coming home next month, and I wanted to invite you over to my house so I could fix you a sandwich. Told me the story, it dawned upon me, it took him 30 years to see the fruits of his labor. Your work is like that. You're like farmers who plant seeds, who may not see the fruits of your labor in the season that you plant the seed. And sometimes it takes many seasons to see the fruits of your labor. That first story that I shared about the woman who became licensed, I know for every story like that I can share for somebody who turned their life around, I could probably share 2 or 3 for people who did not. So we want to spend this morning talking about ways in which we can motivate the clients that we work with to make life changes. So this seminar is entitled Motivational Interviewing. There are 3 objectives, really. One is to introduce the principles of motivational interviewing to you. And then secondly, to talk about how we can use those principles if we're working with clients who have addictions, co-occurring disorders, etc. So let me ask you, if you were to leave here this morning with 2 or 3 ideas that would help you to engage and work with your clients more effectively, would that be a good use of your time? Yes. Okay, let us begin.